I'll use this opportunity to tell you about a meme that I saw that said, when people suck the life out of you, they could at least take some fat with it.
This is the Branching Out Genealogy Podcast, your go-to guide for family history news, tips, tech, and tea. Here are your hosts, Elizabeth Swanee O'Neill and Tami Osmer-Mize.
We are back, listeners out there in listener land. It has been a long and strange journey to get us back into the recording booth, but we are finally here. Tami, do you want to tell us where you've been?
I feel like I have been everywhere in the past few months. I think from a couple trips out to Arizona. I was out there earlier for my dad's 101st birthday, came home, flew to Texas to help my daughter move to Salt Lake City, where I'm really excited. I'll have a place to stay when I'm going to go to the library. Flew back home from that trip so that I could witness my second daughter's wedding, and then flew somewhere else after that. Came back. We had her reception. I had, I think, every relative I have living just about at my house. And just when I thought I was ready to get back into things and catch my breath, my father passed away. So that meant another trip out to Arizona and at least a week or two of just getting over that. I kept thinking of the old movie, was it Four Weddings and a Funeral? It was like, oh my gosh. So that's where I've been. And I know, and in between there, we had some times that I was open, but then you had a few things going on. What was all that?
Yeah, I had one long, horrible thing that happened to me. So around the beginning of April, I got really horribly sick, and it just kept getting worse and worse. And I eventually wound up in the emergency room where they diagnosed me with a nasty case of colitis and a humongous gallstone. I had no knowledge of this. I had been I'd been to my checkups and nobody ever mentioned gallbladder disease. So this came as a pretty big shock to me. One nasty round of antibiotics that I'm pretty sure were created as some kind of chemical torture device.
Most likely.
A unwanted colonoscopy and gallbladder surgery later at the end of May. I'm finally starting to feel like a human again.
It's like July 1st was this ray of hope for me. It was like, okay, that's 6 months past, 6 months of just one thing after the other. And I'm hoping that you're feeling the same way, that this bright, shiny future we have. And I do have a quick question for you, though.
Okay.
Is there ever a wanted colonoscopy?
No, I don't think so, but I finally ran out of excuses to not have it. I'd been putting it off for probably about 15 or so years, and the surgeon wouldn't do my gallbladder surgery until I had it to make sure that the colitis was gone. On the bright side, there's nothing wrong in there.
Well, good. Like I said, we're both looking forward to getting some life back to normal and getting things done.
And it hasn't all been bad. There have been some good things that happened while we were gone. I found out and was very surprised to be nominated for and receive the Award of Merit from the National Genealogical Society.
That's a big deal.
I was really surprised when I found out. It was like this one little ray of sunshine that came through all the bad stuff that was happening. That was at the end of May, right before I had surgery, that they announced that. So if you're listening out there, NGS people, thank you very much. I am very honored to have received that award. And Tami, what happened to you?
I'm so excited about this. This is for ConferenceKeeper. You know, I've been doing this now for 10 years, and we rarely get mentioned in anybody's best of lists except for my own when I make them. But this year, we made the list of 50 of the best free family history websites. Then this was an article that was posted by FamilyTree magazine, the UK version, though. It's an excellent list, by the way, and it's on their website at family-tree.co.uk. The list has a bunch of excellent sites, and many of them are for doing your research in the United Kingdom, but it does also include several excellent general websites like Cindy's List and ConferenceKeeper and old maps and history directories. So it's really a great list to check out. We were 48, but we made the list. So
Hey, you made the
excited.
list.
Yep, very excited.
Congratulations. Well deserved for ConferenceKeeper.
Thank you.
Tami puts a lot of work into that. But I guess that also falls under the NGS umbrella of activities.
It does now, yes, since NGS now is the parent owner of ConferenceKeeper, and I couldn't be happier that they are.
So that's where we've been and why we haven't published any new content for I don't even know how many weeks, a long time.
I was counting in months. I don't know that.
So last time we said we weren't going to be sick or have any more absences. Did we forget to knock on wood?
All my stuff, it was all family history. It was weddings and moves and relocations and death. And that's all part of family history. And it just has made me really want to make sure that I have all of my details of my life and the living family history recorded. But I'm really looking forward to having just some time to catch up.
Well, I've done nothing but rest for about 3 months, so I'm kind of looking forward to doing things like a normal person.
I don't think I've ever done anything like a normal person, so
I'm not going to argue with that. All right, so let's jump into our topic for today, which is Tami joining the DAR. Now, I've been after Tami for how many years? Probably since like 2010, when I first found out that she had a qualifying ancestor. I've been pestering
that you have
to get her to apply. And she always had a reason why she couldn't do it. And I'll admit they were valid, but I don't give up that easily.
With all that's been going on lately, again, it just culminates with the let's get my own personal family history, ducks all lined up in a row. My dad was a proud member of SAR. My sister had joined DAR, so this isn't totally foreign to our family, but just haven't made that leap yet, and I think I'm ready.
Well, I hope so, because we've been down this road before, and then you swerved to go somewhere else and never finished.
I don't know if it was a swerve as a crash. That's usually what happens.
One of the advantages of doing this is that the DAR will preserve your family history, and it will be available to future cousins and descendants who are researching and can take advantage of your fabulous research.
I'm excited.
So before we jump into your application, do you have any questions about joining the DAR?
In general, I have a couple questions. Some I kind of know the answer to, but I think it would be useful to talk about here. One is, if I join, how do I know which chapter to join, and how, when I'm doing my application, do I need to change to a different chapter? Do I need to attend meetings? My questions are surrounding the actual membership in a group. And do I have to wear a fancy hat? That's the real burning question.
Yes, fancy hats and fancy teacups are required. No, they are not. But, I thought they were when I joined almost 30 years ago, and I was hugely disappointed to find out that there are almost no fancy hats ever, and not much tea and fancy china either. I mean, there might be in other chapters, but, in mine we have like finger foods that somebody picked up at Costco. So hugely disappointing. Anyway, so to answer your question, that if you go to the DAR website at dar.org, you can click on the join button where it says become a member, and there is a little box that says chapter locator. And you can click on that and you can see a list of all the chapters nationwide, worldwide actually, that you could join. As a matter of fact, we just organized a new chapter in Ireland. It's the Hercules Mulligan chapter. And my daughter and I are going to become associate members of that one because we have Irish ancestors. So there's chapters all over the world.
I'm just going to derail my question here a minute with a new question. Is this Irish chapter? So the people who belong to it are descendants of American revolutionary? Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool. Are they expats or are they Irish?
They can be either. Usually I think that members of we call them the units overseas. I think that a lot of those members are, like you said, expats, Americans who live over there and wanted to have a DAR chapter nearby, but they certainly could be people from that country. The only requirement is that you can prove direct lineage to a patriot someone who aided in the Revolutionary War. They don't have to have been a soldier. They don't have to have fought in any way. Maybe they donated money. Maybe they gave a horse. I've seen all kinds of qualifying things.
What generally, as a genealogist, we have definitions of what proof is. So for those that maybe they know they have a Revolutionary War ancestor, but they haven't gotten birth and death certificates all the way back to that guy in the 1700s, what all is accepted as proof? What generally can be used?
Well, I've been a DAR chapter registrar for more than a decade. I'm thinking like 11 or 12 years. So I've done a lot of applications, and they do require vital records like birth, marriage, and death certificates for the first 3 generations. So that would be you, your parents, and your grandparents. Now, if, say, your grandparents were born or even died before vital records became required in their state, then you can find some other type of documentation, say a census record. As you go down the line, you're certainly not going to find vital records, because once you get past the 20th century, they're, unless you have New England ancestors where they registered these things at the town level, you're not going to find them. But you may get lucky with land records, with deeds, with court records. I do a lot of Southern research, so I'm always trying to be creative. But the key in any lineage society is that you have to be able to prove the connection between generations. So if you have a birth certificate or a death certificate and it does not list parents, and you have nothing else to prove that that was the child of a next generation, then you've got to find something. Or they do accept an analysis on one. You can use one analysis for your application. And there are some pretty strict requirements for writing the analysis. So if you have to go down that path, then you need to check and see what the requirements for the analysis are.
So if, say for my grandfather, say I don't have death certificates for his parents, but I have his birth certificate that lists them as his parents, that would count as who his parents
Connecting
were?
the generations. Okay, yes. Cool. Yes. That is one of the best, because not only was the birth certificate contemporary to his birth, presumably, I haven't seen the document, but I'm assuming that it was, then the people who were present at that event would have filled it out. So it's more likely to be accurate.
Yeah.
To get back to your earlier question, like I said, I haven't seen the document, so I don't know.
No, I'm just laughing at people who were part of it are usually present at the birth. Yeah, the mom's usually present there at the birth.
Usually, yeah. She may have been knocked out depending on what generation it was. Here's your baby. Well, you didn't see it come out.
Good point, but then there's DNA.
Yes, and the DAR does accept DNA under certain conditions. Then they are starting to accept it more and more. I think Catherine Borges.
Yeah.
She's been the I don't know what her title is, president, head honcho, chief bottle washer at ISOG, the International Society of Genetic Genealogy. For many, 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 many years, I believe she was one of the founders of that group. And she was just named the national chair of the DAR DNA network.
Oh, nice.
So, in my opinion, it's about damn time, because there is nobody more qualified than her to be in charge of that. So absolutely. Kudos, Catherine. You deserve that. So I didn't answer your first question. And the answer is you can either pick a chapter near you geographically, or you could probably join any chapter. And the reason why Tami is joining my chapter in California is because I strong-armed her into it. Because as the chapter registrar, I get credit for all the new people. You can transfer to another chapter once a year. If you decide that there's a chapter near you in North Carolina that really floats your boat, then you can certainly transfer to them.
I say that I will have to check into what's available to me around here. I did go to the DAR website and put in my zip code, and it brought up a whole list of chapters, and I peeped at a couple of them, but then I thought, am I really going to get out and go anywhere? We'll see. We'll just see. I'll be happy to be a member of your chapter until I get around to doing something else. How does DAR membership benefit me and my research, my family?
Well, as we talked about earlier, they will preserve not only your application digitally, now all of these things have been digitized, and all of your documentation, and the DAR's database is open to the public so that people can go and see your research. And if they choose, they can, for a fee, they can download your application and the documentation. And they have gone back to removing page 1 and substituting it with just typed information, which protects your privacy, your address, your phone number, and all that. Which, as a researcher, that's kind of a bummer, because if somebody wanted to contact, not like they couldn't find you, but if they were looking for someone else who doesn't have a very public presence on the internet, it would be harder to find that person to connect. And I believe you cannot download documents for anybody who might still be alive. So they wipe out the first 3 generations. So if your parents or your grandparents are still alive, you can't get the documentation of living people. So they do put some privacy constraints out there, but all of those older generations, which is where most of us are trying to connect to, will be available. So you're helping other cousins and descendants and people who are researching into your line. And you can become a chapter registrar, and you can be able to use the database where you can see all these things without having to pay.
Well, I feel like I really lucked out here. Not only that my dad has an SAR application and my sister a DAR application, but that you, one of my besties, is a DAR registrar. So I have somebody to basically hold my hand and help me through this. How would someone else who wasn't quite as lucky go about starting their process to join DAR?
Well, go to the DAR website and hit that chapter locator, and then search for a chapter that is near you. There's a link to click on, it says membership interest, and you can click on that and you can enter your email address and your name and any other information that's required by the little red asterisk. You can even go so far as to note if you have a family member or an ancestor who was a DAR member, and give what you know about your patriot ancestor. And then when you submit that, it will go through the system and it will eventually land in the inbox of the registrar of the chapter that you expressed an interest in.
So each chapter has a registrar, a helpful person that
Yes, there is required to be a person on the board who fills that job. You may get somebody who is very good at this, or you may not. I think you're likely to get someone who is qualified to do the job. And if you need extra assistance, there is a lineage research committee at every state, and there are other volunteers that can come and help you. If you've got a big hole in your lineage and you don't feel like you can get through this by yourself, they will contact you and help you. You just need to tell the chapter, I need help. And then the registrar can send the flag up the pole and get some help there.
Oh, that's really nice to hear.
Yeah. So your first step is just fill in that form, and it won't be overnight. It generally takes a few days to filter through the system and get into that registrar's inbox. And, it is summer, so they may be on vacation at the moment, but that's basically how you get connected with a chapter, unless you know somebody. If you're feeling super lost and you have a question about joining the DAR, you can send us an email at hello@branchingout.show, and we'll be happy to get back to you on that. Let's take a look at what your application is going to require. So you said that your dad was a member of the Sons of the American Revolution.
Yes.
And your sister is a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Yes.
The DAR does not accept other lineage society applications as evidence, or as they call it, proof. But you can gather all those documents that were used and put them with your application. But since your sister was or is a member,
she's already proven it all.
Let's take a look at her application. And your ancestor that you're working with is Isaac Hatch. Your sister's application is through the child named Ira and his wife, Mary Prouty.
Yes.
It's on the application, Isaac Hatch and wife, Mary Polly Shepherd. Isaac Hatch was living at Tolland, Windham County, Connecticut, and he was a private in the military. Isaac Hatch assisted in establishing American independence in the capacity of private and teamster in Connecticut Regiment, 1781 to 82, under Captain James Dana, Major Humphreys, and Major Shipman, and Captain Charles Miles. And he had a pension, *W17993. So if you are a descendant of Isaac Hatch, there are currently 2 applications for him under which you can apply.
I'm surprised that there are only 2 people connecting back to him. There's just lots of descendants. I think he had 9 kids of his own, and they all had handfuls, and so that's unusual to me.
Yeah, your sister's is the most recent, and then there's one from the early 90s that was submitted. So if anybody is looking to use this application, you want to check them both, but probably use the one that's the most recent. So for your generation, which is Generation 1, you need your birth certificate connecting you to your parents. So it can't be one of those cutesy ones with your footprints and the name of the hospital. And
The one I tried.
it has to have your parents' name.
The one I tried to use to fly to Mexico one time and nearly didn't get on the plane. I thought if it had a footprint, it was real, right? It was the right one.
I don't think that's the same as a fingerprint.
No, evidently not.
Yeah, no, they don't accept that one. It needs to have the parents' names on it. And if you choose to name your husband or husbands, you need to submit a marriage certificate and your husband's birth certificate, unless the marriage certificate has that information on it. So depending on the state, it may or may not have that information on it.
Just FYI, the California marriage certificates do have both people's birth dates on it.
So ladies out there, you don't have to list your husband if you don't want to. Marriage information is not still required by the DAR because you don't have to be married to make a baby. But if you have daughters or granddaughters that may want to join in the future, it'll make their lives easier if you do include that information. If you don't, they're going to have to dig it up and turn it in with their application. So it's up to you what you want in your file. If you don't want it in your file, you don't have to have it. So that's up to you.
And for me, it just makes sense with having 2 daughters that may at some point want to join. And I believe there's scholarship opportunities for my grandson, maybe. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit everything right now because I have it and it'll make it easier for everybody.
And your grandson can use your application to join SAR if he chooses to do so. Cool. So looking at your sister's application, it's blank where it lists the death dates of your parents. And I know you mentioned at the beginning that your dad passed away, and I know your mother passed away a while ago.
They were both living when she applied, and they are both not living now that I am applying. But I do.
So you will need some evidence of that.
I just got my dad's death certificate, and my sister is getting my mom's scanned and over to me. And I have 2 of my 3rd generation, my grandparents' death certificates, and 2 I've just ordered because I didn't realize I didn't have them. So I want to have those anyway. So I ordered those 2. Generation 4, again, I was missing just 2 of them, but those were available to order from the Ohio History Connection. They had copies. And then Generation 5, I have death certificates or death register entries in the areas where they died before the death certificates were being issued. Will something like that be acceptable?
Well, for those of you out there who are looking to use the application of a family member, or if you're able to connect with some other member in the database, you don't have to reprove generations that have already been accepted unless, as in the case of Tami's parents, there's new information like the fact that her parents have passed since her sister joined. So that does need to be included. Or if you have better information than what was submitted the first time. So for some reason, like you said, there were no death certificates submitted on your grandparents, but the DAR approved that application anyway. I don't think they would approve it now without those death certificates because your grandfather died in 1969 and your grandmother died in 1992, and that was well after vital registrations were required in those states.
Right, and both of those certificates I was able to get online at either Ancestry or Family Search.
Yeah, and they likely weren't available when your sister applied anyway, or when your dad did his SAR application. So
that's very true.
I'm sure that the DAR would be happy to have updated information on that.
I like the idea of collecting it all up together in one place, especially like that, so that it will help future folks.
Well, I do see on Generation 5, you have Herman Curtis Hatch and Mary Ann Stevens. And there is practically nothing for Mary Ann Stevens, except there's some dates that she was born in 1840 and she died in 1925. And the genealogist has written in that she was buried in Farmington, Trumbull County, Ohio. And she was married circa 1862 in Ohio.
And I have her death certificate now. That was now also available online.
I am sure that they would like to have that information. It wouldn't necessarily be new information, but the genealogist had to look that up and write it in. For every person on the application, you have to be able to prove one place and one date. So you have to be able to place them and date them somewhere. It's preferable to have all of it filled out if you can, but those pesky women, we don't always know everything about them. But she was submitted with 2 dates and no places. So the genealogist kindly did your sister a solid and looked some stuff up.
Evidently. Okay. Well, we've got, like I said, I've got Mary Ann Stevens's death certificate, but you can tell me if something like this would be considered as well, if I were going to go back further just on her line. So her death certificate lists her mother's name, which is Lucinda Jones, and I have a letter that my grandmother had gotten from her great-grandmother, and page 3 of the letter starts, "Here are the begets and the begats of the Jones family." With a name like Jones, this was just such an absolute treasure. Would information on a personal letter like that written 100 years ago, could something like that be used as proof if I were trying to prove that line? I'm just curious now.
I believe the answer is yes. Looking at it from a does it meet the GPS kind of perception, are you able to prove the provenance of it? And did the person who wrote it have personal knowledge of what she was writing? Do you know where she got that information?
The way the letter is worded, it's like a woman recounting her own family history. My dad was this person and his dad was this person and he married that person. And so it's not written in a genealogical style. It's not written as if copied from a Bible. It was just personal recollections sharing the begets and begats of the Jones family. But I was just wondering that if for some reason you couldn't find anything else on those people. If
I have seen those kinds of documents used, and I did actually use something similar in my BCG portfolio, but I was able to prove the provenance of where it came from. And the person who wrote the letter had personal knowledge of what he was writing about. So yes, I have seen it done. If you can do research and find better documentation, then that would be better. But if that's all you have, then you can give it a go.
Well, that's what I've done. You and I had talked about what had been submitted on my sister's, and there were a lot of things like obituaries or funeral registers and that sort of thing. But I was able to pull death certificates on most everybody, and the ones that I couldn't get death certificates on, I found death registries or I think, and tombstones and that sort of thing. But I was able to find other information that helped verify them.
Well, the genealogists put check marks for just about everything. So when this was approved, they thought everything was cool. They didn't put a check mark by Isaac Hatch's wife's name, but I think that may have just been something they forgot because they put check marks next to her birth and death dates and their marriage dates. So I think maybe that was just something that was overlooked. But if you're looking at these applications, if you've ordered one or if you're able to get your chapter registrar to show you one, what it looks like, anytime you see parentheses around some words, like looking at this application, you can see on Generation 3, they've put parentheses around Warren in Trumbull County, Ohio. That means that they are disputing that information. Whoever submitted it didn't submit proof that it took place in Warren. So just because you have personal knowledge that this was the town in the county in the state, but you don't have a document that names that town, you can't put it on the application.
Oh, okay.
So every single thing that you put on the application needs to have a document that is backing that up. So if you know that Herman Curtis Hatch died on the 14th of April in 1836, but all you can find is his tombstone that says 1836, then that's all you can put on the application. And they're not going to deny you membership because you don't know the date in 1836 that somebody died. But again, don't put it on there if you don't have anything to back it up, because they'll just parenthesis it out and it'll be ignored.
Interesting. That's good to know, too. I have so many Trumbull County, and most everybody was West Farmington or Farmington. So unless it says exactly that town or county, then I just don't put that information in, correct?
Yeah, well, we see that Herman, it says he was born in Windsor, Vermont, but Windsor is parenthesed out. So the genealogist was disputing Windsor. Apparently, there was no evidence to back that up. You know, sometimes we see an obituary and it says John Doe was born in Vermont, but you've known your whole life he lived in Windsor, but you don't have anything that says Windsor on it.
Well, that makes sense. On the one hand, this seems like a lot of work and a lot of proving and that sort of stuff, which, you know, it's fun though. But on the other hand, I really appreciate the thoroughness of it and knowing that if I'm going to look at other lines of other people's applications and research, been checked over pretty well. That's nice to know.
Well, you know, there's a caveat there because if you're looking at applications that are really old, like if it starts with a 1 in the 100,000s or the 200,000s, basically anything before the 7 or 800,000s, the requirements were much less. And basically, the women just wrote in their ancestry, and it was believed because a lady wouldn't lie about her ancestry.
That's right. We lived in a different society.
We lived in a different society back then. Now, sorry, you can't just do that. You need to back it up with evidence. But you got lucky because your dad was in SAR and your sister is in DAR. And honestly, you're really honoring your dad's memory by doing this.
When he turned 100, last year, the SAR came out to his birthday party that we had at my sister's house there in Tucson, and two fellas came out in full Revolutionary War soldier gear. It was late April, but they were in Tucson, so it was rather warm still, but they were in their full wool outfits with hats, brought muskets, let the kids handle the muskets. Oh my gosh. It was...
I so want to do that. But, you know, it's California and none of that happened out here.
Oh, that's too bad. It was wonderful. They treated him so well. It was wonderful.
Well, on that note, let's take a quick break and hear a word from our sponsor. And when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about what's happening in the genealogy world.
The Branching Out podcast is pleased to be sponsored by VividPix. VividPix offers a full range of products and services to help you preserve and share your cherished family photos and memories.
All right, welcome back. So now we're going to talk about a few of the current events and things that are happening in the world of genealogy. You may or may not have heard about these things already. On June 14th, the Board for Certification of Genealogists released the 2025 edition of the BCG application guide, which took effect on July 1st. So if you are a potential applicant to the BCG and you are wanting to submit your preliminary application, then you are now subject to that 2025 guide, as are any associates who are renewing after the 30th of June, 2026. If you're currently on the clock, then you have the option to use the new 2-part application process beginning July 1st. Now, there are quite a few other changes as well, so you'll want to take a look at what those are. And you'll want to make a note on your calendar. The BCG is going to present a webinar on this 2025 application guide and talk about the changes on Tuesday, August 5th, 2025. And that will be through Legacy Family Tree webinars. And when I last checked, the registration link was not available for that webinar, but it will be coming out soon. And in the meantime, you can download a copy of the new application guide as well as the rubrics on the BCG website at bcgcertification.org. And we will put a link in the show notes for you. All right, Tami, you've got something spicy.
I think a lot of people are aware of this already, although it did kind of come as a surprise. It's in the ongoing saga of 23andMe. Just this past week, the bankruptcy court approved the $305 million sale of 23andMe to a nonprofit organization called TTAM Research Institute. And this company is led by the former CEO of 23andMe, CEO Ann Wojcicki. This did come as a surprise because just maybe a few days or a week before, Regeneron had sent out postcards and emails to people. So people were thinking that that's who now owned their data, but that was not the case. This was one of those 11th hour happenings that just turned out, in my opinion, really well. 23andMe's new owner is TTAM, which, if you think about it, are the initials for 23andMe. TTAM.
That was a total duh moment for me.
It was, right? Anyhow, they say that they're still committed to adhering to 23andMe's existing privacy policies of always honoring customers with choice and transparency. Everything I've read tells me that anything that you agreed to when you had your data at 23andMe is exactly being held the same now. However, different states are questioning what's going on here. The California Attorney General Rob Bonta has said that the sale to a research institute does not comply with California's genetic privacy law, and his office is evaluating next steps, suggesting the state could take further action to intervene in 23andMe's future. I think everybody is still just very concerned about what will happen to the original data.
California does have very, very strict genetic privacy laws. I am not, and I have not deleted my profile and my raw data from 23andMe. I have no plans to do so in the near future. I'm waiting to see what happens. I have made some great connections on 23andMe, so I think I know a little bit more about it than Rob Bonta does.
I'm in the same boat. I had considered the deletion, but I didn't see a reason to pull the plug and pull the trigger on that until I knew what the outcome was going to be. Had we learned that someone else had bought it and was going to suddenly start doing medical research and all sorts of things that we didn't want done with our data, it takes 5 minutes to delete your data. So I held off as well.
Until I get a good reason to do that, I'm not doing it. So sorry, Rob, not happening.
Yep, I'm in that boat too. And I feel comfortable knowing that the company's former CEO is now running a nonprofit that will be handling this. Sounds good to me. I could be off. I've been trying to scan the blog posts of some of the major genetic genealogy bloggers and making sure that I'm not missing something.
They're all saying wait and see. So I'm going to wait and see. When I hear Blaine Bettinger or Kitty Cooper or Roberta Estes screaming, get your DNA off there now, then I probably will do it. But not yet.
So there's other DNA and website news. You want to talk about that, Elizabeth?
Yes, you can now connect your FamilyTreeDNA account with your WikiTree family tree. So if you have a WikiTree account and you've connected your family tree to that world tree on WikiTree, you can now list your WikiTree ID on your FamilyTreeDNA account. So people who are connecting with you in your DNA matches can pop over to your WikiTree and see your research. Exactly. So this is really simple to do. You just sign into your FamilyTreeDNA account, go to your account settings, and then click on the genealogy tab. And then I believe you have to scroll down a little bit under WikiTree connection is where you enter it, and then you click save. And if you don't know your WikiTree ID, it should have been emailed to you. WikiTree emailed those out not long after this partnership was announced. Or you can just go to your WikiTree profile, and when you go to your profile page, it's that little snippet at the end that has your surname and then a number after it. So I'm really excited. I'm Swan A1.
Ooh.
Oh, and also don't forget you can connect your MyHeritage family tree, so your FamilyTreeDNA account as well. So you can connect all these things together and meet up with your cousins where they are. So speaking of MyHeritage, Tami, you have some news about something they came out with recently.
Just a little bit. A while back, they had introduced live memory where they would take any photograph and animate it so that you could have people dancing or kissing or waving or jumping up and down. But it was only available on your phone, on smartphones. And they have now made that available on the website as well and added a few more different animations, such as being chased by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So when I tell my kids that when I was little, no, I absolutely love the live memory feature. I know many people think that It is, quote, creepy. Like anything, it's a great tool and it depends on how you're going to use it. And I think my favorite example I've posted on my Facebook page when it first came out, I had a black and white picture of my dad when he was 10 years old in 1934 out in back of the farm boxing with a neighbor kid. And it was just a still photograph and I animated it through the MyHeritage live memory on my phone. It was so fabulous. It just had the two little boys, boxing each other and you could see the dirt kicking up under their bare feet and their jeans. And
that one is so cute. It's not even a little bit creepy. Some of them are creepy, I think, because they hit that uncanny valley. And it's like VR avatars that are too realistic. And AI, we've seen that it's just the bots that are too realistic. They're like humans. And your brain can't process that. It's just, it goes into your brain and just, you can't relate to it.
Like the videos that I've seen on Facebook of Abraham Lincoln talking and telling you not to trust things you read on the internet. But no, I understand that.
When they're doing things that they would normally be doing, like that boxing one that you talked about, that just seems like a natural little video. I didn't feel that way when I saw that one.
I've seen that photo so many times, and I know that it's my dad at 10. But when I saw it animated, it wasn't just this little kid at 10, in the backyard. It was like, oh my gosh, my dad was a 10-year-old boy. As a kid, you kind of forget that your parents ever were like people because they're mom and their dad. So it was really touching to see him playing in the yard with a neighbor kid, realizing, he didn't have neither one of them had on shoes. And, it was just very cool. Anyhow, I do really like the live memory, and it's now available on the website. And I believe what they had said was originally when they brought it out for your smartphone, you were allowed so many credits, and they are resetting that counter for those that haven't signed up for all the extra bells and whistles that get that included anyway. So you still can try it out again for free on the website.
Yeah, we'd love to see what you come up with your MyHeritage live memories. So tag us if you post something and we'll take a look.
Well, we were going to have a book segment again this month from Gina Philibert Ortega, but she, like us, has had way too much going on. Just got home from a overseas vacation and not going to be home for a day or two before she heads off to GRIP, the Genealogical Research Institute, the in-person program up there in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania next week. So she will not be on our show this week, but we hope to have her back very soon to discuss some of the many fabulous books she has been reading.
Well, that sound means it's tea time. And today we're going to switch it up a little bit, and Tami is going to spill the tea. I'm usually the dark and twisty spilled tea person, but I'm going to defer to Tami today. Tami, what have you got?
I came across something online that horrified me and chilled me to the bone. There's so many fabulous ways we can use artificial intelligence in our research, and there's so many webinars on ConferenceKeeper right now about different ways to use AI in genealogy. Well, someone posted on Facebook that they had found a new and interesting way to use AI, and this is what was written. It said, I use AI to ask about a family, and it gave me all the kids. I realized one was missing from the family search page, so I was able to add him. I had no idea he was missing. And that's the end of what was posted. And I had no words because there was no citations involved. There was just AI suggesting that there was a kid missing. There was a lot of comments in there. Fortunately, I would say every comment I read was equally horrified. Many of them toned down their horror. To try and be a little bit more palatable. But the overall takeaway, a lot of people were saying, just because there's a gap in ages does not mean that there is a missing kid. I mean, if so, I should have maybe 3 or 4 kids in my own family because my 2 oldest are 6 years apart. And then from my middle child to my last child, there was a 10-year gap. So I'm tempted to ask AI where my other children are.
My kids.
And then I'll add them all to Family Search, which again it's even more horrifying to think that someone is out there propagating all of these. I hate calling them hallucinations because they're flat out lies. If my kid comes home and tells me, no, I didn't do that, Mom, I'm not going to say, oh, are you hallucinating? I'm going to say, cut it out. You're going to lie. When we were at Roots Tech, Family Search was talking about different things that they've added where you have to include the citations and a source for information that you're adding. And I haven't been on that lately. And so I need to go check that out to see.
Well, you don't have to include it. There's a pop-up that asks you for the source, but you can just skip right by that and ignore it if you choose.
I would really hope that if anybody is being so egregious as to add names to Family Search because AI told them to, that they would at least, since they don't have any other citation, note where they got that name from that they had asked AI.
Well, you can ask AI, where did you get this information from? And it should tell you.
Sometimes it makes that up too.
Well, it does, but you can catch it in a lie sometimes. When I was sick, I was asking it to help me come up with a low residue diet because I had to eliminate fiber from my diet for a while. And it was telling me to drink peppermint tea. And I said, well, isn't peppermint tea bad for people with gallstones? And it comes back and says, oh, yes, it is bad for people with gallstones. So don't drink that. I'm like, if I hadn't known that.
I think overall, the takeaway on this is artificial intelligence can be very helpful. It could help you locate missing children as long as you take the results that you get and research those sources and verify that that information is valid, that it isn't just being literally pulled out of thin air.
Yeah, don't just plop people into a tree unless you've verified that they actually ever existed. So I have some more happy tea to spill.
Good. I need a bright spot.
Now that Tami brought us down. And that would be a fairly new initiative by GedMatch called Honor the Fallen. And they are encouraging and even rewarding people for joining this project. And by doing this, your DNA could help identify one of the thousands of unknown soldiers from World War II and also the Korean War.
Oh, that's fabulous.
Yeah, so by contributing to GedMatch's database, you can create a reference that will encourage the U.S. government to use forensic investigative genetic genealogy, aka FIG, to identify the remains of missing service members. In return for adding your DNA to GedMatch, you can access a relative or an ancestor's individual deceased personnel file, or an IDPF. And basically, an IDPF contains documentation about service members who died while serving in the military during World War II and the Korean War. So they have to have died in service. I went poking around in this database and I didn't have the name of anybody who died in service, so I didn't find any of my family or ancestors. And these files were previously classified and they're now being made available through this GedMatch partnership. So how do you participate? Well, all you have to do is upload your raw DNA to GedMatch. And they do ask that you set your privacy to allow law enforcement to use your data in forensic investigative genetic genealogy. Just a couple of notes about that. The U.S. government or law enforcement does not get to see your raw DNA data when you consent to be included in those types of searches. So just like any other user of GedMatch, you only get to see the name or the GedMatch alias. You don't even have to use your name. Your email address, you could create a brand new email address and pop it in there if you don't want to use the one that you have. And they can see how much DNA that you share with that forensic profile. So you can, like I said, you can search this database to see if your family member or your ancestor or anybody really is included in this file. It helps if you know the person's service number, which you can find in a variety of places online. If you don't know the service member, you actually can just search on a blank box, and that will bring up all the names in the database. But when I checked yesterday, there were over 360,000 names in that database, and it is super tedious to jump through there. So your time would probably be better spent searching for that service number. So personally, I think this does sound like a worthwhile project to help bring the remains of unknown military service members who died in service home. So we do encourage you to participate if you feel so inclined. And I know people have their issues with GedMatch. I've been using it for a number of years and I have not had any issues with it. Give it a try and see.
Is GedMatch a paid program, something that you need to pay for?
You can use it for free. There are a lot of really awesome tools that you can use for free. I have a tier 1 membership because it gives you some extra tools that you can use. If you're doing things that are a little more advanced, you can pay, I think it's about $10 a month I pay for the tier 1 membership. You can opt into this and upload your raw data from Ancestry or MyHeritage or wherever into GedMatch for free and become part of this project.
Good to know. Thank you very much. That's good stuff. Well, that's all we've got for this episode. I hope you join us for next episode. We've got more planned, more good stuff coming up, and hopefully no big events.
Please, no.
Keeping us from recording. We hope to have several episodes coming out here in the next short while. So stay tuned, sign up, follow us, all those other good things, and happy researching.